needs that is unique. Most of the time, the differentiation that happens in the value proposition is based on the softer characteristics. So far, I'm doing fine. Anybody wants to add anything? No? Good so far. Then, still on the right-hand side, we have two blocks that are basically allowing us to transport our value from where we produce it to our customer, deliver it to them. And those are the relationships we build, the customer relationships, and the delivery channels. The customer relationships on top is basically the links you develop with your customers and the intelligence you have about them. Again, a number of different levels of relationship exist, which correspond to different types of business models. I'll give you again the extremes. One is no relationships at all, which corresponds to typically mass market segments. The other extreme is very, very close relationships, some of the type you have in very, very good hotels where everybody knows you by name. And others, which are some of the new emerging actually relationships, have to do with co-creation. So involving your customer to such an extent that they become part of your business model. So the relationship goes to a totally different level. It's not just knowing about your customer, it's not just serving them, but actually making them part of your business. An example, the gaming industry is probably one of the best of these. There's a lot of gaming platforms that transform the gamers into producers. They're part of the people who develop the value proposition. Most of the development in the user experience area nowadays actually is involving this type of engagement with the customer. So a lot of the co-creation that happens that different industries are engaging in, on smaller scale usually, is evolving their relationships. It's an expensive block. Keep it in mind. The delivery channels is basically how you get your product in all of its different stages to the customer. And that will involve online channels, offline channels, face-to-face, personal contact, and so forth. And all the stages, touch points that you have with your customer. From the moment they hear about you, through your engagement, all the way till you retire your relationship. So advertisement is an interesting point because in most models, advertisement actually appears as a second segment, which supports the initial segment of the, so it uses the current segment of the business model, customer segment, as a community, and it creates revenue. So it's actually a model we will look at later, which is called multi-sided platform, where you have a dependency between two different customer segments. One which is paying, and the other one which is consuming value but not paying necessarily for it. So the advertisement is generally not a channel for delivering per se, when it's an online platform. When you use it as a marketing means, yes. So depending on from which point of view you look at it. You wanted to add something?
We use this an awful lot. We use this an awful lot, and insurance is a very heavily intermediated business. So one of the things that we often find you end up having to do is sometimes look at dividing that value proposition down the middle and say value prop to the broker or intermediary and value proposition to the end customer. Because sometimes it's not quite a two-sided model, yeah, but it feels a little bit like you're pitching to two customers, essentially.
Yeah, so I would actually treat this as nearly as a different segment, but a segment which appears in two places. It appears here as a customer, but at the same time it appears here as a partner. And this is something that happens quite often in business models, is that elements can appear in several places. So it's a partner to whom you're delivering a value that they as well use to create a value to deliver to another customer. So there's this kind of interesting dependencies that come, and that's exactly where we're going to start seeing some of the new patterns of business models coming in and changing some of these elements.